So, I'm teaching a class on Tuesday on the spiritual hierarchy, role, purpose, and function. And it's a 13-week class. And I've been, and there's certain information that I think as a reminder to all of us, because during invocation, prayers, and meditation, clearing, and all of that, I invoke many beings and many spiritual entities. I want to talk a little bit about the spiritual hierarchy and the role and the function that they play as it relates to the uh, differential that exists between us as human beings and where God exists, the realm that God is in. So if you can think of um, God as the unmoved mover, the nothing that manifested into something, uh, you would be far off. In many traditions, many mystics have described, well, first of all, the description of when they connect to that realm is they have to use an analogy because it is a form of existence that's so unlike anything that we know that the singularity of expression where we exist as one singular consciousness when you reach that higher realm is so unlike it that you exist as a collective consciousness of plurality that it's extremely difficult for us to comprehend. And for that matter, when you return back to being a singularity of consciousness, it becomes very difficult for you to explain to people what you experience. I've often referred in other classes about what I call the white space. And that white space is the entry point or the bridge that takes us into that awareness, a form of existence that is so unlike us that in the Kabbalah, they call it the negative existence. It exists, but it's so unlike us by our own measure, it's nothing. It doesn't exist. But it's not a nihilistic void or vacuum. It is rather a field of infinite potential for manifestation. So at some point in that realm, in that field, the unmoved mover began to focus its consciousness into a point, a tiny point. One of the potential for manifestation get focused on and get the undivided attention of the multiplicity and plurality that is that collective awareness. And when that focus is pushed, pressure, and it's been described by many mystics as this, it's pressure, the kind of pressure that you and I cannot begin even to comprehend or understand. It's unbelievable pressure. And from that pressure, begin to precipitate out the fundamental building block that manifested our universe. Now, I have said a lot in these few sentences because according to a lot of mystics, including the Kabbalah, the world was created by 10 steps that were repeated in 4 phases, the exact 10 steps. In the Kabbalah, those 4 worlds are the world of absolute, translated as the world of emanation, which would equal what I call the infinite potential, an endless field of infinite potential. The world of formation or Braya, which is when the precipitate, the basic building block, like hydrogen molecule or subatomic quartz particle, begin to show up, exotic particle. And then a particle has mass, but very tiny mass. Okay? And then the next world, the world of creation, or Yetzirah in the Kabbalah, and then the world of manifestation, which is the physical world that we exist in. Each of these worlds, absolute, that focus, that pressure I talked about, where one potential get pushed to a point, into a point, that entire process moves through 10 steps, which are the 10 Sephirot of the Kabbalah. Then the next phase, the world of formation, another 10 steps, and so on and so forth. Now, at every level of this descent of the intention of the uncreated into physical manifestation, there are celestial hosts who support, or rather takes the intention of the uncreated, because God is the unmoved mover. It exists in the world of potential. It will not pass the threshold to precipitate itself out. It will allow the intention and the thought, idea, and the emanation to move through. But at every step of these, 4 stages and the 10 Sephirot in these stages, they are celestial hosts. You can call them angels. You can call them demons, because the demons themselves play a role too. I will explain that in a second. Okay, hold your judgment for a minute. They have a role that they play in the economy and the balance of all things. No judgment to any entity, anything that exists in the multiverse. It is a puzzle piece, and all of the pieces of the puzzle are needed to create the in and out breath of God. If you can think of manifestation as God exhaling out, and at some point God is going to inhale and everything will go back in. Okay? That's one analogy that one mystic came up with. The in and out breath of God. The exhalation and the inhalation. So, yet they are proxies. They are celestial beings all along the various steps that God has empowered to carry his will and his intention. And these beings, these hosts, their purpose is to obey. Now, this doesn't mean that all of the beings are obeying, because we were the last created as human beings. None of us, well, I shouldn't say none of us, very few of us simply obey all the time. Many of us are ornery, recalcitrant, or even combative. Okay? And we refuse to learn because our egos get in the way, etc., and so on and so forth. The same with the angelic realm, the same with all of the other realm, the Elohim realm, and all the other realms that are in between. There are beings who have decided, I'm going to do my own thing. I don't want to obey anymore. I'm going to do my own thing. Although we have free will, we can decide to do things on our own. But when you disobey, there are consequences. And the consequence is that your grace is removed. And once your grace is removed, you find yourself labeled, because now you're using your own free will to try to manifest and navigate your own path and go through the descent process. And once you've done this, your ego gets in the way, right? Because the sin of disobedience is pride. And because of the pride, this is why in spiritual literature, it's the greatest of all sin. And once you begin to descend that path, you lose that grace. And when you lose that grace, you now have to figure out a way to regain it back. And at that point of losing the grace, you become a fallen, if you're an angel, a fallen angel or a fallen Elohim. But it doesn't mean necessarily that you're evil. I want you to understand this. Because in the Kabbalah, in the ancient teachings, particularly the book of Enoch, which is the book that I've used in multiple classes with you, and I'm using it again on this class that I'm teaching, this book, the book of Enoch. In the second book of Enoch, he talks about these various realms because Enoch, who eventually became Metatron. So here's the thing. God did not just create angels, demon, and human. There are other species and other kind of being that he created to the multiverse. There are feline beings, there are reptilian beings, there are spider beings, insectoid beings. There are all kinds of beings that were created. There are Arcturian, there are Saurian, there are Larian White. There are all kinds of beings that have been created. And all of them play a role in that complex puzzle piece that we call our universe. Some of them, all of them were created with free will, and all of them were created ascended, aligned with divine purpose. And whomever, and I'm saying this because I want you to understand that even the reptilian, I know that term in the light community means somebody evil, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. There are Dracos, for example, the royal blue Dracos, who are actually ascended. It's not all of them that are evil. When you meet one that's really dark, and if you happen to be on the path, and they're focusing their wrath on you, they could really cause you a lot of trouble. And I want you to understand this because I want to explain this in a way that gives you neutrality instead of giving you biases and fears when you hear certain things that cause you to clench. And because we are disconnected to God's grace, when you clench and you have all these bias and you're afraid and you're in fear, whatever you're fearing, because you yourself is also a co-creative partner with God, you're going to create and make manifest. What you fear the most, you're going to attract it to yourself. And it's not God punishing you or the being necessarily attacking you. You're going to attract it because you fear it, right? So if you can find a moment to get into that state of neutrality, it will actually serve you better to remain in alignment and understand that in the economy, the balance and the equilibrium that must be accomplished, all of these various species, including the species that have so-called fallen, serve a purpose. Because by that definition of fallen, because we're so egotistical as well, we have fallen. We're not in grace anymore. At some point when we're in paradise, we're in grace, but we got kicked out. So we too are fallen. And I want to explain this in a way that makes you understand, because it's important for us. In the book of Enoch, in the second book, he began to describe that two angels came to him. And they said to him, we're going to take you to the various levels of the heavens. We want you to say goodbye to your sons. And then you're going to write down and note everything that happened to you as we ascend with you. And then when you return back, you're going to write down all of the things that you experience to give it to your son so that it will remain for prosperity. And in the process of him ascending to the first level of heaven, he experienced a whole series of beautiful and extraordinary things. And what he didn't understand, he asked the angels that were with him. The angels explained. When he got to the second level of heaven, surprise, surprise. And by the way, the book of Enoch originally existed in the original Bible. It was in 325 AD in Nicaea that the church fathers, the Christian church fathers from Constantinople, edited and removed the book of Enoch out, and all of the books that exist now as apocryphas, but that were at the time included in the original Bible. And this book paints a completely different picture of Christian tradition and laws. As a matter of fact, and by the way, the book of Enoch in the Christian Coptic church, meaning the Egyptian and the Ethiopian Coptic church, that book never got taken out because they were not, they did not participate in the Nicaea thing. They were doing their own separate thing. They were isolated from the influence of the Western Christian church, and they were doing their own thing. So that was not never removed. And a lot of the information we got, there are other copies that circulated as well. They, by the way, with the church tried to, once they removed all of these apocryphas, they tried to destroy all copies of them, eradicate them. Anyway, some copies were survived, and thank God we have that document. And the reason I'm giving you all this preface, it's because in the second heaven, when he arrived there, Enoch noticed that the beings that were in there were actually fallen angels. Okay? In the second heaven. Then he left that realm, the angel guided him even higher into the third heaven. And when he got there, what he experienced, he saw first the tree of life. He smelled these incredible aromas and these scents, and he felt like he was soothed by this. It's almost intoxicating, almost getting drunk on the aroma and the smell of everything that was around him. And the angel explained to him that it was a good place for people who have suffered and were persecuted on earth. This is where they come, and etc. It was a wonderful place for them to be. Then when he looked to the north of that place, he saw what we would have experienced or call hell. All kind of souls were there that were suffering. So according to this book, hell doesn't exist in the pit of nothing or fire and brimstone. It is actually in the third heaven. It is completely different, which means that early Christianity, early Christian, first century after Christ up to the third century after Christ, these people had a completely different understanding of good and evil and heaven and hell. Completely different understanding. Okay? This is why, by the way, in the book of Job, if you read the first chapter, you will realize Job went in front of the throne room of God, and not Job, Satan went into the throne room of God and was having a casual conversation with God. For being a fallen angel, he was having a casual conversation with God, and God mentioned about his great servitor, the great righteous man that Job was. And then Satan said, "Has he been tested? Does he adore you and praise you only because, and obey you only because everything, you've blessed him with all of these blessings? What happened if he were not blessed for a while?" And God said, "Well, okay, test him then. Do not take his life, but test him." And sure enough, Satan returned back to earth and did all kinds of things to Job. He lost his family. He lost his son, his 3 children. He lost his wife. He lost his house. He lost everything. He was literally become homeless on the side of the road. But never, not once did he doubt or fear or had any doubt that he was still a favorite of God. He never lost his faith. And because of this, at the end of the test, God elevated him and gave him even more. I'm saying this because I want you to understand that it was not until the New Testament and through the influence of Zoroaster and the Zoroaster faith, where the devil was personified and vilified as a horrible being whose entire purpose was to distribute pain and suffering. It was, Hasatan does not do this. Hasatan, what it does is that it tests our faith. It's a way for us to remove original bread of shame. It's a way for us to pass a test. He is basically the exam, the person who will administer a very tough exam to us. And when we pass the exam and we overcome it, all of a sudden we can accept the blessing that the universe can now give to us. That was the only role, if you can think of Hasatan as not as a being, but as a energy system that permeates everything, that's designed to become what the Native American, call the adversary, or in some circle, these called the accuser. A way for us to be tested throughout, so that we have a resisting force that will challenge your belief system, challenge your existing paradigm. And if you can overcome all of it, there is a great gift, an even greater gift that's given to you. In Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about the same thing. When you are going through the bardo and you pass the first 7 days of the bardo after you transition and leave this life, you meet all of these various color lights. Those are the benevolent deities. Then you meet the wrathful deities, which show up as demons, giant beings as big as the sky, screaming, their voice all like thunderclap, yelling and creating cacophony, with bodies in their hand that they're ripping apart, blood gushing, all kinds of horrible, horrible description, multiple heads, multiple eyes. Yet the book keeps saying, remember, it is an illusion. What you need to do is that you have to become non-attached to it and realize it's an illusion. And the moment you recognize this, the being that was as tall as the sky changes, and it becomes rose petal that falls from the sky into the ground. And then right behind it, there's a luminescence, there's a light, and a Buddha comes in to invite you into enlightenment. That resistance must happen, because this is the only way. Because if it was easy for us to do, unfortunately for all of us in the universe, we evolve and grow only when we have resistance. When everything is status quo, many of us makes no effort. We take it for granted and we become entitled. This is how the original bread of shame evolved, through entitlement. But when there is resistance, until resistance was introduced, we couldn't remove the shame. And that's the role that Hasatan is playing in the economy and the balance of our universe. For the inhalation to come in other words, for bioregenesis, for us as human beings who has fallen so far as you can go on creation, on the earth, we are at the very end of the exhalation. For us to return back to God as ascended being, as elevated being, we must get a resistance that will help us purge. We must face challenges and we must overcome them. And that's the purpose of everything that's happening on the planet at this moment. Whether it's emotional, financial crisis, political, social crisis, climate change crisis, all the things that are happening around us that is making us feel unstable, or for that matter, solar flares and all of these things. It's part of the resistance. Yet at the essence of being, all of what I just described is an illusion. And if you can bring your consciousness into peace and serenity to realize this, when Job was suffering and all of the things were, and when he kept on praying and praying, and said to God, you're still my shepherd. You're still my refuge. And my love for you is unceasing. And whatever it is that I have done that you think I should go through this, I welcome it. And as he kept on praying and saying this, the entire illusion began to dissipate because it had no effect on him anymore. So I want you to understand the role that is played by these beings. And by the way, there are lots of other names that are equated to each other, but in true spiritual sense, they don't equal each other. Satan is not the same thing as Lucifer. They are the same class of being. Lucifer is the first archangel to have disobeyed and desire to do his own thing. Satan was created when the universe was created. Pick up on the nuance, please, because it will help explain a lot of things for you and keep you from the forest of errors. When the universe manifested and precipitated out, when the receiver had the bread of shame and contracted and said no. I refer to past recording and past classes I've done, and it contracted and said no. When that happened, and God realized, the giver realized, I can fulfill every wish the receiver have, but for me right now, the only thing I can remove is this bread of shame. I'm going to touch him. And when he touched him back, he shattered it in a spiritual detonation, creating the illusion or the stage that we call a universe. You can think of it in different terms. It is the world of absolute and the creative principle, the unmoved mover, then decided to focus its consciousness and mind into one point. And as it focused it, it began to precipitate primordial quantum particle to manifest a universe that include time and space, because prior to that, there was no time and space. But in that bubble that was being created, that expanded at speed we cannot comprehend. In that bubble, Satan was already in it. Because what the uncreated was trying to create was an environment where we became pieces of the receiver, of the original endless and infinite receiver, where we can learn how to give and receive from each other through resistance. Because one of the problems is that the receiver was feeling shameful and undeserving because everything was so easy. It just wanted something, desired it, and it was manifested immediately. It just fell from nothing into its lap. It was getting too easy. Therefore, it developed entitlement, and it needed to have a resistance. This is what disconnects us from manifesting. This is what, and the struggle that we're having. Why I have the same kind of relationship? Why am I having the same kind of financial problem over the years? Why is it that I'm always feeling? That's the resistance. Why am I in this family with all of this epigenetic craziness that are being passed from generation to generation? That's the resistance. And when you can transcend all of it by realizing at any moment that you are, that it's all an illusion, because at the essence of being, none of it exists. What in Buddhism is called non-attachment, then all of a sudden, all of it dissipates. And at this point, an angelic form or celestial host will come and invite you into enlightenment. So Lucifer was the first archangel to disobey, to say, not disobey, but to emancipate. Disobey is the wrong term. He emancipated by desiring to do his own thing. And he took 1/3 of the head of the angelic realm with him. Okay? There are other names that often are used in spiritual and Kabbalistic, the name of archangel, that are so-called dark archangel. The archangel of death, so-called Samael. Samael is the archangel that came during the night for the 10th plague and took all of the firstborn of Egypt and killed them, as commanded by God. I want you to understand this. That archangel existed in the second heaven and was sent by God to manifest and to create this event. These beings, although they serve a purpose that may seem terrifying to us, but that terrifying effect or purpose is actually there for the economy of things. This is the recycling center of the universe. And that archangel served that purpose. Now, this is not somebody I'm going to invite for tea, for sure, but I can respect the role and the purpose that it has to play. And all of us are going to die from here, and we're going to have to face that being at some point. And the more neutral you are to that energy system, because many people who have gone through near-death experience are saying or claiming that it's not a terror. In fact, there's peace, there's serenity. There's a great show on Netflix called Sandman, and it's written by this great sci-fi writer named Neil Gaiman, and it's beautifully filmed. The first season was done. It's phenomenal, and he talks about the beings that are archetypical, like dreams, desire, death, like seven, what he called eternal being. And the story is about basically seeing through the struggle that Dream has had with his family and with everything around him. And there's a great scene where Dream and his sister, Death, meets. Oh, by the way, there's a fight between Dream and Lucifer in there. That's actually phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So well done. The wording, just incredible. So, and I want to bring that conversation between Dream and Dad. Dad showed up as a supportive, loving, caring sister. And whilst they were talking and conversing, she had to take several people into death. Human being. She was so caring and so loving and so supportive, smiling, holding these souls and caressing them with tenderness. She was so loving. The writing, this man who wrote this, it's just channeling something immense to get into the consciousness of these archetypes and to be able to give you a spin and understanding on them. And there was the part of the conversation, I can't remember exactly when because Dream asked, don't you think that what you're being asked to do is difficult? He said, no, I resented it at some point, but I have a role to play. I will be the last person standing when nothing else exists in the universe. I'll clean up the place and I will fold all the chairs and put everything away. She said, I have and it was a female. She said, I have a role to play. I don't resent it. It's my purpose. Blew my mind. Blew my mind. There's another archangel also called Kamael, which is also not the same as Samael, but Kamael. Kamael is the name actually translates as the burner of God. This is the being or the archangel that's responsible for purging decay out of our body. It can purge zealotry, it can purge negative emotion, it can purge cellular structure that are decayed, that needs to be cleansed and that needs to die. It burns and purges everything. They all exist in the second heaven, but they don't serve the same role. And don't lump them together as evil. Because in the economy of our universe, they serve a purpose, an important purpose. And at some point or another, I have called Kamael a few times. When I was teaching the class on the Tree of Life, the Bardo class, Kamael is Gevura. And when I invoke and put the symbol of Gevura in the nape of the neck, I'm invoking Kamael. And Kamael is literally the purger. It's what cleanses from you what doesn't belong. Anytime I have resistance, I have attachment, I have things I cannot let go of. I'm trying to control things too much and I need to let go of things and I don't know how to do it, I call that energy in to ask him to help me purge and help me surrender and let go of things that I'm too addicted to and I seem to do out of control. I hope you're getting my drift. And I want you to understand here that God did not just manifest and create, as I said earlier, human being, angelic being, and then there was God. There are others, what we call ET races, non-human races that also exist in our multiverse, and some of them are highly evolved and highly spiritual, and they play a very important role. I want to spend the rest of the class to talk about some of these beings so that you have an understanding, so that in prayer, in meditation, or in my channeling, if I call upon any of this collective, you can begin to understand what I'm talking about. I hope this is okay with you. So if God is the unmoved mover, around God in the realm of non-manifestation, which is the realm or the 10th heaven where Enoch showed up, there were beings that were around him. In John, and he talks about these beings in the book of Enoch, but John also from Revelation chapter 4 talks about the fact that he was taken. A voice told him to come into the highest heaven, and he came in and he saw in that realm at the throne room of God, sitting around him, 24 elders that were praising God with crown on their head, and they were praising God. Often in meditation or in channeling, I would refer to them as the 24 elders that surround the throne of grace. And around them, there were 4 cherubim. Cherubim is a class of angel, and the cherubs are not what you see in art, because the cherubs are usually fat little babies with wings that we see in artwork, sometimes with an arrow throwing, like Cupids throwing arrows of love. This is not what they are in original literature. There's cherubs that are also at the eastern gate of heaven when Adam and Eve were chased out. They also show up when Ezekiel and Elijah were taken into heaven by a chariot of fire. And that chariot had also the same kind of being. And they showed up as being with multiple wings, with eyes all over their body. And more importantly, the head of a ram, an eagle, a lion, and a lamb. So if you and I were to see a being like this, it is very, very different than the cherub that shows up in artwork, the little fat angel that are flying around, the chubby little angel that are flying around. They are actually watchers. And they are, and the sun, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember exactly what they were, but they were praising God nonstop. Okay? And they are watching. This is why they have eyes all over them. They're watching all the time, trying to make sure that the holiness, that they create boundaries. And the fact that there are 4 separate heads, one of a ram, an eagle, a lion, and a human, it's the 4 signs of the zodiac. And a water sign, a fire sign, an earth sign, and an air sign. That's what all of these things are representing. Aries, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius. And they are trying to, because what they do is that they control the elements. The cherub are actually angelic beings that are under the influence and the protection of Archangel Seraphon, who is the archangel of the earth, the last step of creation, or the step in the world of manifestation that allows everything on earth to be controlled. So that also showed up in the throne room of God. They were like guardians, if you can call them. They are like the Secret Service or the bodyguard of God. And they are there to protect, to make sure no outside can influence it. The description in I don't have my Bible with me to read the whole text, but I remember the description. There were column of lights and fire. There were all kinds of things that was going on in that room. Then often in channeling, there is the Council of 12. If you can think of the uncreated, or the first point where the precipitate begin to show up, for particle to begin to fall out. So between the world of emanation and when the world of formation is just about to show up, there are 12 gigantic trunk of light. Think of it as a burst of light, as an explosion, like a Big Bang. And there are 12 gigantic radiation of light. They are the Cosmic Council of 12. And of course, there are galactic elders. Oh, I forgot to mention one other collective that's important too. The silent watchers of the cosmos. These beings all have achieved the highest level of ascendance, and they are, what's the word? They are so detached, so non-attached to everything that's going on, that they don't have any judgment. Instead of them, they are the perfect witness. And therefore, this being exists in the realm of, between the realm of the unmoved mover, the realm of potential and manifestation. And what they are doing is that they are, when we all of us hear, but not all of us listen. So when you hear, you're trying to tactically analyze the sound that you're hearing, so that you can begin to not only understand, but so that you can respond and try to survive, and even better than that, try to be right. Whereas somebody like that is in that realm, or consciousness in that realm, is trying to listen, so that, and they don't have judgment, there is no analysis, they're just listening so that they can understand. It's a different purpose. They don't have to speak, they are the silent watchers. They watch, they hear, they see. And when I mean watch, it's not just I, but the entire being. They listen with their entire consciousness. They see and they perceive with their entire consciousness, and they are witnessing. They are the perfect witness. There is no judgment there. And that alone is powerful enough, because there is no greater healing that can happen than for you and your problem and your predicament and your fears and your pain. It's for you to be heard. And really being heard without any judgment. Because when that happens, the healing begins. Because one of the problems we have as human beings, when we are pain and suffering, no one hears us. At least very few people. Then at a galactic level, we have multiple collectives. These are beings whose soul is so advanced that, like, for example, in our Milky Way galaxy, we have a collective of beings that compose the governance of the entire Milky Way galaxy. Meaning what? It means that we have more than a trillion planets in the Milky Way galaxy, and we're a medium-sized galaxy. We have over 1 billion suns. There's a collective of 12 beings who compose the spiritual governance of that entire small quadrant of our universe. I know a few of their names because I've channeled a few of them. Lord Mercury, Lord Viwemus, Atlantis, Adonis, Cosmos, Avalon. Those are the 6 names that I know. The other beings have not shown up to me. They have not revealed their name. I've asked, and when I ask, I hear crickets. Nobody is stepping forward to tell me nothing. So I want you to understand that literally, the same way we have a soul that animates our physical body, there is a soul or a consciousness that animates our solar system. The same way Gaia is the energy that animates the earth, it's the super consciousness that allows the balancing and the exchange of all the various ecosystems that exist on earth. That super intelligence that has allowed when the earth was originally created and came into manifestation, it was a toxic place that none of us organic life form could have existed. Meaning by that there was so much sulfuric acid and methane gas and carbon monoxide and all kinds of things that could kill us. None of us could have been existed in that space. Yet somehow over several billion years, all of that disappeared. And oxygen, which didn't exist there, began to grow from the green algae and the process of photosynthesis. And that oxygen grew, and took over, and all of a sudden, organic life form began to prosper in it. There is an intelligence that created this. And that super intelligence has managed, this is Gaia now, has managed to take the toxic stuff and bury it into the core of the earth. They're still there. The sulfuric acid, the methane gas, it's still here. But Gaia has suppressed it to allow us now to inhabit the earth and enjoy and exist in this beautiful world. Collectively as well, taking from another point, the sun, without the sun, there is no life. There is a pair of beings, Helios and Vesta, that inhabits the sun. They are the soul that animates it. The same way we have a collective of being at the galactic core that actually help in the economy and the balance of that. And then if you take it one step further, in our entire universe, Lord Melchizedek, and I'm not talking just the Melchizedek that showed up in the Bible. This is one of his incarnation. In fact, I'm going to go even further. The Lord Melchizedek is the soul that animates, the true Lord Melchizedek, that animates the entire universe. But at the core of every galaxy, there is an aspect of the Melchizedek that exists. In our own galaxy, Lendos, Viwemus, Atlantis, Adonis, Cosmos, Avalon, and there's an aspect of Melchizedek that rules them all. Because everything that exists in the universe is a cell in the body of Melchizedek. Therefore, we should understand things in a very different way. Of course, in the part, and the reason I'm mentioning this to you is that I want you to also understand, if you can think of energy, the exhalation, God exhaled, exhalation out, and universe was created, we got created, and so on and so forth. But there's an inhalation and there's a path of return. Enoch, Elijah, Jacob, Ezekiel, all of these beings who biblically have ascended or lifted in a chariot of fire and taken into the heaven, all of them have returned back to God and have accepted some sort of position in the spiritual governments of the universe. Enoch was then taken into the highest heaven and became the archangel to all of the other archangels. He was so righteous. In other words, what was human, because of his hard work and his understanding that everything is an illusion, and him being in grace with God, with the creative principle, got taken into the highest place and inherited a role that was extraordinary. He chose the angelic path, and in the angelic path that he chose, he became the archangel to all the archangels. Jacob became archangel Senophan, the Lord of extended height. And Elijah became archangel Uriel. So when we begin to ascend and we get into 5D, it is the beginning of the journey. Because at that point, we get to choose which path we want to follow. In my book, The Primer for Ascension, I have outlined in the first chapter, in a part, I think it's page 20 something. Page 21. There's a part that where I talk about what it is like to be beyond ascension, beyond 5D. At that point, you get choices. You're presented with a whole bunch of choices. There's the path of becoming a bodhisattva. There's the path of angelic path. There's the path of you becoming the path of neutrality. There's so many things, that choices that you can take and you can actually connect to, right? And so what I'm saying is that as you begin to elevate and ascend, depending on the kind of natural gift that you have, a path will show up for you. You will know, am I following the path of the Logos? Am I going to the path of magnetism, the path of sonship, the path of the Bodhisattva, the path of neutrality, the angelic path, whichever the case may be, whatever you connect to, naturally will show up for you. And that's what you will transform into as you return back to God. So if you can think of a stairway where the angelic forces, the exhalation is descending, we are now creating the pulse and the movement forward by our effort to ascend the inhalation back into God. And as we move forward into that inhalation, it's not just one path. It's a plethora of various roles that we can play. Because God is too sophisticated. Consciousness is too complex for it to be just one choice. Any questions, any comments? So as we go down the path and we drop and we attempt to return back, we will begin to find the natural gift that we have and what aligns to our consciousness, and the path will be shown to us and we will know what we will select. You may intellectually feel, well, I'm going to choose that path because blah, blah, blah. This is not the way it works. Deep in your core, that choice is already made. and as you move forward in the path of return, you will simply trying to remember the choice that you've already made. You will begin to say, well, I was standing here and I had this feeling, I had this sensation, and all of a sudden it will arise from you, from your core, that that's the path for me to follow. Not everyone is going to become an archangel or an angel. Not everyone is going to become a bodhisattva. Not everyone is going to become, path of neutrality or the path of rehabilitation. At some point, whatever it is that you're really good at, that's your true purpose and your true gift, will show up for you. And you will simply step into that puzzle piece. And again, your grace will return and obedience will return back into you. And you will know. And this is why in the Lord's Prayer, it says, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Because we have to remember to put our ego and our pride away and to allow ourselves to now obey, to let God's will happen, to surrender and to stop fighting and stop trying to control everything. Any questions, any comments? I know I'm expanding your head and I'm blowing your head up. I know I'm frying your noodle. I know the concept that I'm bringing now is paradigm shifting. Okay, I know the concepts are shattering your consciousness into, trying to process and understand this. I mean, I shared with the class earlier this morning that when I had a paradigm shifting event like this that happened to me, I started to have nightmares actually although intellectually I was so intrigued by what I was learning. It was a French book that I was reading. This is when I was in my 20s in graduate school, called Treatise on the Reintegration of Being. It was in French, Traité de la Réintégration des Êtres. And the book was mentioning things of that nature. I had never heard of this before, but it felt so right to me. Yet the dogma of the church was causing me to have nightmares. Multiple nightmares after months, where I felt like some invader was trying to come into my apartment and was trying to encroach, and I kept on calling the police. I got so scared that I went and bought a baseball bat. I actually thought, I woke up with such fear that I would run to the door and try to listen in the hallway that somebody's going to come in. I closed the curtain. Somebody's outside trying to get in. The fear got worse and worse. And at some point in my dream, or every time I'm calling the police. And every time in my dream, finally, when I began to capture the intruder, and I was beating the person. There were multiple dreams where I ran after the intruder. I was beating this person. And the person was a mask that was deformed in a park bench somewhere. I'm beating him. And all of a sudden, this person removed its whatever clothing, tattered clothing it was wearing. It removed it. And what was standing in front of me naked was an angel with gigantic, beautiful wings. And I dropped whatever I was holding in shame. I was so shocked. And this is when I realized that the entire 6 months of nightmares, I could finally get a real interpretation for it. the new idea of a paradigm, of a different way of seeing the world was coming to me and showed up in my dream as a thief or an invasion in my apartment. And the police that I was calling is the church dogma that I was trying to reinforce, because according to the church, any of the stuff I'm talking about now is heresy. I'm saying this because some of you are Christian, and you may end up having, if you're really intellectually or attracted to this kind of thought, you may end up having a crisis similar to what I had. Mine was extreme because I had no one to talk to. I was in my 20s. I think I was 24, 23 when this was happening for me. Yeah, I was 24. And so I'm saying this because I want you to understand that when I realized actually it was a greater perception of the divine, that my God concept and the dogma that I was taught was insufficient to explain the true nature of being. That actually what I was being given, although threatening to the dogma, it's just that the dogma no longer served me, and I had to emancipate. I had to break a glass ceiling. It was a therapy. I had to break a glass ceiling and move into something else. Any questions, any comments? All right, I think I'm going to stop here, and we're going to do a long meditation. So let's take because I'm going to take you on a journey to connect with these various celestial beings. So why don't we take a 5-minute break for water, for you to refresh yourself, and then we'll do a closing meditation. 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Let your mind and your heart sync with each other. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And realize that your entire self-awareness is emanating from the middle of your chest. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And notice what you notice. Listen. Listen as if the more than 50 trillion cells in your body had ears. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And become a witness to a brilliant point of light that exists in your heart space. Pulsating, vibrating light, able to take any shape that it wants. I surrender all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let this pulsating white light extend to envelop your entire chest cavity. Pulsating light, able to take any shape that it wants. Pulsating, vibrating white light, expanding now to envelop your entire body. Pulsating, vibrating light, able to take any shape that it wants, now extending 1 foot away from your body. Pulsating, vibrating light, able to take any shape that it wants, now extending 2 feet away from your body. Pulsating, vibrating light, able to take any shape that it wants, now extending 4 feet away from your body. Pulsating, vibrating light, able to take any shape that it wants, now extending 8 feet away from your body. Pulsating, vibrating light, able to take any shape that it wants, now expanding 16 feet away from your body. And let your entire being transform into this beautiful bird of light as it begins to elevate into the heavens, reaching to the Lord of extending heights, Archangel Seraphim. The one whose foot stand on the earth, but whose head rests in the highest heaven. Open our heart so that we can surrender our ego and our pride. Gift us with the ability to see through the illusion and the challenges of the adversary as an opportunity to let go of attachment. Let the burner of God help us purge what no longer serves, and bring us into a cleansing and purifying state of awareness that we may be clean in front of the throne room of God. May all the elements that are composing or multiple attachments to people, places, and things cease to influence us. As we are now presented with the essence of true light, true wisdom, true compassion, may we begin to heal. Accepting the peace, the serenity, the liberation, and the freedom of an aligned consciousness to celestial and divine grace, will, and power. It is not our responsibility to fix, repair, or do anything. Let us emancipate into accepting divine grace as a way to restore through obedience and alignment through all divine purpose. May the light of God, the peace of God, the love of God, and the healing of God be embodied through my entire consciousness and my entire cellular structure. May I become a proxy, an anchor to allow the uncreated benevolence of the infinite giver to pour into this world and radiate healing, loving, emancipating, liberating everyone that I have ever met, and everyone in my circle of influence.
Let there be light. And let me shine this light onto the world. May a perpetual and endless cascade of grace and blessings pour unto me and through me, and radiate unto the earth, Gaia, and my geographical location in Earth Chakra, a cornucopia of endless blessings. Thy will be done. And may bioregenesis and all return back into our celestial and light body and purpose, the destiny of the evolution of Gaia, begin now. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Let all suffering end. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes. How you all doing? I want to thank you all for listening to me tonight and for participating in our session, in our class. If you're listening to us on Patreon, thank you for your support. For those of you who are listening to us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with your friends so that we can increase the algorithm. I send you all my deepest love, and it is my hope that the peace and the serenity that you're feeling now can radiate out from you to everyone on earth. Good night, everyone. I'll talk to you next week. Many blessings. Love you.